Hey everyone, welcome to the Slice of Construction podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is the co-founder and CEO of Ediphi, Dustin DeVan. Dustin, how are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you here. Let's dive right in. Tell the audience a little bit about your background, and then we'll go into Ediphi.
Sure. So I'm a construction tech veteran. I started out in construction as a general contractor, worked in construction for 6 years. And then in 2012, I decided to make the leap of faith and start a tech company. I was living in Palo Alto at the time, so you kind of get enthralled in the tech scene, especially circa 2010 and 11. Um, the idea behind my company, which became Building Connected, was construction's highly collaborative and highly fragmented. And the fundamental problem I saw was every builder was maintaining a contact database of all the vendors that they hope to communicate with. And the problem is you communicate with so many people across so many different organizations that those databases degrade very quickly. So the industry would benefit if we had one network for communicating about projects coming up in order to facilitate the invitation to bid and qualification process. So I started Building Connected in 2012. That was a roller coaster, lots of lows and unbelievable highs. We did pull through. We raised 52 million in venture capital. We got acquired by Autodesk for 275 million in January 2019. For 2 years, I ran construction strategy in Autodesk. I am very thankful for everything that I've learned from Autodesk and them acquiring my company. It was an amazing, life-changing event for myself and many of my employees. I'm very proud of the work we did. Um, I had uh, I had a brief stint doing a hardware software company monitoring indoor air quality. Learned that I never want to do a hardware company again because hardware is really hard. The saying is true. It went really great until supply chain really made it the business uh, economically unfeasible. Uh, but now with Edify, um, this is actually going after a market I always wanted to do with Building Connected. So it's a second pass. It's something I wanted to create. If you went back to our old seed decks and Series A decks for Building Connected, I started talking about how invitation to bid wasn't actually this massive addressable market, but we were creating a software wedge with every business in construction. And from there, we could start building on and creating things. Okay, you invited someone to bid. Now you need to compare that bid to what did you estimate and budget for the project. And we can start developing estimating tools. Um, so yeah, it's a long road to tackle a problem that I've actually recognized exists for a while, and that's estimating is not in the cloud, and there's no way to um, track the cost and evolution of an estimate from a concept to a buyout. Actually, in construction today.
Talk me through, Dustin, like how you're. I know you're super busy. How are you spending your day these days? Right? What is kind of a typical? Well, I'm not going to say typical because I'm sure every day changes. But what is? Give us kind of a snapshot into a day into your life. I know some days are probably more hectic than others, but it's ever changing, right? This space. So would love to hear that.
It's ever changing. When you run a startup, I mean, the CEO's job is to put the right people in place to do the day-to-day work, and then you're doing a lot of the you're basically a fireman because things are going to come up. A bug is in the application. You need to de-escalate the situation, help the customers resolve it. So I wish I could say I have Monday through Friday planned out on what I have to accomplish. I have high-level goals that I know we need to accomplish by quarter or by year. Um, so I think I spend a lot of time thinking about what are the things that are going to move the dial in the long term? Who are the right people and the right values and attributes that we need to bring to augment our team today? So I think a lot about the hiring that we want to do, especially since we just raised our Series A. We have some seats to fill. I think a lot about the culture. Uh, I think people underestimate the value of creating a great work environment. It's one of the things I was most proud of about Building Connected. I still to this day have people call me and say it was the greatest place they ever worked and they wish they could be a part of that again. And the return on investment and great culture, it's hard to quantify, but it's there. Because if you have people who love your organization, I think they produce a better product for the business and there's better returns for all the shareholders. Um, I think a lot about we have, so with product, it's very easy to imagine what the future could be. And it's very easy to look at what the industry is. But what's really hard is how do you meet the industry where it is today and create a clear path to where the industry should go? Because if you just build for the future, you're never meeting the industry where they are, and you're never going to get adoption. So I think a lot about what are those incremental steps and what's the right order of operations so that we can do it efficiently.
And you talk about creating a good environment, right, for the team and a place that they're proud to work. And it must be so cool for you to get those calls from previous employees that said they really enjoyed working with you and at the company. How so in your role, how do you foster that that culture of people like really loving the company and loving what they're working on? Like, what's your approach to that?
So there's no one person that can own culture. The CEO and the CTO, so my co-founder, what we owe is hiring an executive leadership team that share the same values as you. And if you hire people that share the same values and you set your corporate values, and you hire and fire and promote and talk and discuss those values, not on a daily basis, but as often as you can, then that should permeate through the organization. Um, so it's a lot of intentional. It's also, I think it's really important that uh, you show as a leadership that you have empathy for the positions. And a lot of ways you can show that is it's as a startup, until you're a couple hundred people, the CEO should know what the day-to-day activities are of a lot of their personnel. Show that nothing's above them so that you can appreciate how challenging some of these things are. Like a lot of people take for granted a support person. They might be the lowest payroll on staff, but I'll tell you what, they're key to customer success and they're key to customer retention. And when you're building a software subscription business, net dollar retention is actually the most critical metric long term. And so support people are tremendous. They're your first responders. They aggregate the feedback from customers. They tell you where people are having trouble. So I think building culture is building a leadership team that cares about how every individual is feeling and what they're having trouble with. It shows empathy and compassion for them.
You're a veteran in this space. You obviously you sold your company to Autodesk. You're building this venture. Talk me through what you love so much about the construction space, because for you to start these different companies in here, you must really love it.
I love it. I've looked at other software verticals and I've actually come 360 degrees and realized I don't want to leave construction software because there are so many fundamental problems, and it's so important to society that we address these things. The fact of the matter is, um, I used to hate this saying that construction's seen the least amount of productivity gains of any industry besides, I think, like agriculture, because I think that they skew the data and they ignore a lot of the underlying permitting and safety conditions and all of that. Regardless, we have to see productivity gains in construction because we are not meeting the needs of infrastructure and building in a cost efficient way. And technology has, for the most part, actually been focused just on what happens in the field. We're focused on pre-construction, which has seen the least innovation of any space. And so what I love about it though is it's so much more complicated and so much more lends itself so much more to technological innovation. And so like we're in like a brand new frontier that's going to see radical change. And we believe that the most important aspect of pre-construction is the estimating process. That's where we're playing because that is actually what you sign a contract to. And the estimate should encapsulate like, okay, what does the schedule look like? What are the objectives of the project? What is the user requirements for the different rooms in the building? If it's a hospital, maybe it's what are the different departments? And so it pre-construction actually is the interface between construction experience, designs, and owners. There's a lot of collaboration and communication. It's a process, it's not an event. And none of the software were architected to support this sort of iterative back and forth between designers, owners, and builders. Uh, so it's really just, it's super exciting. And at the end of the day, you get to support people and then you get to go to these physical assets. Like, I remember when Building Connected was first getting going, I think it was some very large GCs took a shot at us and used us on like Salesforce Tower or the Warrior Stadium. And now we go there and it's like, oh, that was bid out on our software. It's so special.
Yeah, there's not many spaces that you can even like walking down the street, right? Like it's that's the cool part about real estate construction. It's all around us all the time,
Yeah.
and for you to be able to go into those buildings that we're utilizing your software too, that's so cool. There's obviously there's lots of moving pieces here. Talk me through some of the day one challenges when you were launching Edify, right? So you just raised the Series A. What were some of those early challenges, and how did you, as a kind of team, move past them?
So Edify has a very unique origin story that, yeah, I haven't encountered too many companies with this. So I started working with Suffolk Ventures, which is a venture capital firm that was started by members of Suffolk Construction. Suffolk is a $6 billion construction company. They've started an independently operated venture fund that's raised from limited partners, not just Suffolk Construction. I started working with Suffolk Construction, but we have close affiliates. Suffolk Ventures. We have close affiliation with Suffolk Construction. When I joined, John Fish, who owns 100% of Suffolk Construction, talked to me about some of the things they were doing internally at their organization, and they had been spending time developing software internally to solve their pre-construction processes. His head of pre-con, Scott Menard, and Scott's right-hand man, Mike Navarro, who is my co-founder and CTO, were developing estimating tools to automate their pre-construction process because they didn't like what the market offered them. And so as I'm working with the venture side, I'm also getting to know Scott and Mike and John, and we started kicking the can around. What if we took what we've developed and made it an independent company? Is this something that could have mass adoption? And we thought it was. We thought that there was many novel concepts that isn't seen in other estimating tools. You know, the first thing is we're actually cloud software, which there aren't many estimating tools that are in the cloud. There's a lot of companies that say they're a cloud application. What they are is a desktop app that you create a virtual desktop via Citrix login, which has a whole host of issues. That is not a cloud application. It's false advertising. It's fake news. So it's, I mean, it's really sad when you have to market like that. But we were approaching not just detailed cost estimating, but we were approaching, okay, how do you estimate when a client says, hey, do some cost modeling? How does that flow into conceptual estimating? Then how does that flow into parametric estimating? And then how does that flow into detailed cost estimating? And when you have a detailed cost, how does that flow into contracting and buyout? Because it's not just that you estimated it, it's what did you actually go buy it with? And then a lot of these estimating tools from a general contracting perspective, don't think about the general conditions and general requirements, which require a lot of input from the operation team. So we are really taking an approach of, okay, how do we become the financial system of record for getting from an idea to a GMP?
So let's talk about like the future layer to all of this then.
Sure.
So how do you envision the future of construction planning and pre-construction? Thanks to obviously, and how is Edify playing into that future?
So this is a really good question because it's almost like a paradigm shift, because the previous model was owner contracts an architect and they design a project and a GC prices that project. And what that does is result in a lot of projects costing more than the owner would like, right? It happens all the time in public works. In private projects, a lot of times GCs are brought in a lot earlier. Now, what we should be doing is understanding there's a lot of theory and papers written on this in construction, advanced master's degree programs and PhDs. But at the end of the day, cost is actually an input on what you can build. And a lot of times designers don't operate with cost. So if we have estimates that can be creating using design elements, therefore telling you how much it's going to cost as you're doing the design, we can more rapidly improve the pre-con process so that we don't have designs and cost completely out of whack with what the owner's objectives are. So in the future, I see a much more tighter loop on the design and estimating process so that decisions can get made quickly. What you see in pre-con is pre-con can last sometimes twice as long as construction. There's a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is the feedback time from a design milestone to estimating through the value engineering process, ultimately to have it redesigned in the next milestone. There are weeks or months and sometimes years that takes it to get to final design with the GMP. So we're looking at compressing that life cycle.
It wouldn't be 2024 if I don't ask this question, but what role do you see AI and machine learning
AI, yeah.
playing into this future?
So there's a variety of ways where I think AI can help. One, we're not a quantification solution right now. So you're going to see dramatic improvements. We're seeing a lot of technology to take the quantities and extract them to put them in the model. What we can do, though, is with the estimate, start looking at, okay, based upon these estimates, as we start tracking what are the quote unquote value engineering options, it's not actually value engineering. It's usually like what scope do you remove or what things do you trade in order to reduce the cost. But based upon certain types of projects, we can start knowing what to suggest in order to bring the cost down for the client, which would then improve the design revisions. Moreover, some of the things we're doing is, with our programmatic and parametric estimating will help automate creating estimates on very little information. So the way we've architected Ediphi is we help you even define the geometries and mass of the building, build out like what we call a unit mix. So how many units by floor or how many different rooms. And by knowing the distribution and the geometries, if the more people program with us, the more we can actually suggest how to program. And so that's where I see AI and ML coming into play. But we aren't tackling that first. What we're trying to do is actually create the right process for capturing the data and collaborating on the information. The way you train really great models is by having a lot of data. So we want to first own the process and then build on top the models that inform the users of more quickly.
Super interesting. And I have one more question for you, by the way, before we wrap
Yeah.
up here. Outside of Ediphi, if you're looking, you can't pick yourself. If you had to either invest or like what area of construction is of interest, or what company or companies of our interest to you, if you're putting on your investor hat here in the space?
I will give a shout out to should I name names? Yeah, I should name names. So I love the insurance tech place. I'm going to give out a shout out to my friend Justin at Shepherd. I think the way we underwrite projects could be vastly improved. He and I got to know each other because he was the founder of TradeTap and Building Connected acquired TradeTap. He's a wonderful entrepreneur. He just raised his Series A, and I think they're going to be really, really successful. I think the whole insurance market is going to change dramatically. And then I also really love supply chain and logistics. I think there's a lot of marketplace elements. The company that's doing the best so far is probably Kojo, Maria there. So I think that they have a wonderful opportunity. There's going to be a lot of winners in this supply logistics space. I have another friend who is starting a different spin on that company. They're very early. That's Mike Powers at Build Vision. So I actually like some of the stuff that they're doing. Those are the areas that I think are really interesting, and they're outside of pre-con. They kind of integrate with pre-con.
I like it. Oh, and they'll appreciate those shout outs too. Sorry, I lied. That was not the last question. This is the last question. You raised the Series A. What's next? We're about to go into Q2. What's next now for Ediphi this year?
So this year, it's well, the first half of the year, our hiring is really focused on product. We have some ambitious product goals, so it's hiring really top tier talent. Um, and luckily, we've pulled leadership from all the best companies. So we have people from Procore, from Building Connected, from Autodesk, from PlanGrid, and with this A announcement, we're seeing a flooding of people like, "Oh, let's do this again. It was wonderful working with you." So we're trying to build out that leadership team, and we have an ambitious product roadmap. So on the product side, we want to check the boxes on things we think will have general mass adoption, but pave the way for us to introduce a sort of future experience of work. Like I said before, we want to meet the industry where they are today, but take them to where we think the future is. And as we are gaining more and more traction, we'll start building out the go-to-market functions. We're being, what I'd say, pretty selective on how we're going to market right now. We are working with some very large enterprises very tightly. So we have a couple in the top 20 that we have enterprise deals to start deploying across the organization. So we'd rather focus this year on supporting these marquee lighthouse logos and really getting good at a lot of the deployment, the implementation, the onboarding. And then 25, I think you'll see that we rapidly grow our go-to-market. But I'm also a believer, just because you have a lot of money in the bank doesn't mean you have to spend it. So this money is not to just grow as fast as possible. We are trying to build a very big, sustainable business. I'll end by saying why I believe that opportunity is here is if you just look at construction, you have a publicly traded company in Autodesk and design. You have a publicly traded company, Procore, and project management. I will debate with anyone that the most important phase is actually pre-construction. That can support its own standalone publicly traded company. The reason why this hasn't happened and does not exist today is because the industry has never had a cloud estimating solution that could support aggregating the data from all the other sources. So if you look at Procore, they were able to aggregate everything you need to do in the project management, which is why they got mass adoption, because people don't want to buy from so many vendors. And so the fact that the dominant cloud solutions are actually, or the dominant estimating tools are actually not in the cloud, you couldn't build all the other integrations and all the other services you need to build a pre-con platform. But by building estimating in the cloud, you can build a complete pre-construction cloud platform. Not saying we're going to build every function in pre-con, but we can make one. We can support interoperability of the data from everything that you need to do in pre-con.
Well, Dustin, I'm so excited to continue the conversation with you. Hopefully, we can have you come back on again this year, maybe towards the later half of the year, to kind of see where things are at and just to follow your progress. Kudos to all that you've accomplished so far, and really excited to see Ediphi grow.
Thanks. I'd love to.